Hello, this is Neil from masterpaintingnow.com. So in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to learn, the question is asked to me. By the way, if you guys have any requests or questions, feel free to send them in, especially if you bought one of my courses, and say, hey, I like a tutorial on this topic. Now, they'd like to see a whole course on this topic, but probably not going to happen because I don't think I can do a whole course. Not enough material to do a whole course on, but maybe I'll include it in a course at some point. But for now, we'll do a tutorial, and it's how to shade or just pen. So how do you get the 3D look? This has a three-dimensionality look to it. How do you get that 3D look with just pen? So I imagine what that means is like if you have like a big pen or inking pen or something. So I'm going to switch my pencil over here, uh, use my pen. And so what the pen does then in Photoshop is mimics a pen. And let's see, where's my brushes? I'll show you what it looks like. Maybe here. Okay. So under Shape Dynamics, I have the pen pressure set for the size, and that's it. So they control the diameter of it, and that's it. Notice if I uncheck that, it doesn't do it. So this means that the lighter I press, the smaller the line, and the harder I press, the thicker the line. I don't have anything else selected though. Right. So let's go ahead and zoom in here then. What I would do with an ink then is I would start to determine first the major shapes. So the darkest shapes I would kind of just darken with pure black. And so naturally, when you shade with pen, there's all different kinds of styles you can go for. You can go for a kind of a comic style. You can go for more of a realistic style. And with the realistic style, you might want to shade this in more like that, and maybe even use a smaller caliber pen, like a big pen or something. You can probably get the most realistic shading with something like a big pen. Right. And there's actually quite a bit of this I can make completely dark. Now what's going to be hard with this is this side here is shaded by a light from this way, and this side is shaded by light from this way. So um, naturally this is all going to be really dark shading in here and here, and dark shading here. But this side here is all the light on this side is not nearly as bright as the light on this side. And I didn't really catch that with the pencil because I wasn't, the pencil simulated pencil, I guess. So with the pen, you could try to simulate it by just, lightly etching in this whole thing, but it's gonna be kind of hard with this particular pen. You might want to, a smaller pen. I'm gonna just scribble it, but you would slightly go across it like that, like cross hatching it to make it look darker. But I'd probably just go ahead and leave the brightness as bright, or use a second medium or something. But you're gonna see how you get a pretty 3D look here with just using pen lines. And we'll go ahead and erase the other layer in just a bit. So I'm just, this doesn't allow me to do any shading. It's all just lines and dots and whatnot. I like to kind of hint at line here. I like to kind of show where the shading will be with like lines, with thin lines. In this case, I'll use well, this is more of a pencil, so where's my pen? Size 3 brush. Okay, so go to options here, and I'll put Shape Dynamics on, set the pen pressure. Notice it's the only thing checked, so now it's a pen. And what I'm going to do first is just go ahead and outline all the kind of shading points. What this will do, it'll give me this kind of cool look to the drawing. This is just one style. There's so many different styles you can do with pen. It's really just like, okay, how am I going to capture the three-dimensional forms with the pen? And so it's really about, leaving some parts light and some parts dark, or making some parts dark and leaving some parts white. And things like this, I'll just do cross-hatching like that, just little lines. You can see there's little lines. You do the exact same thing with, actually that's wrong, because see, the bottom plane would actually be kind of bright. Now I might actually hint at that with light lines, because the light's kind of coming up. So it's like, then it's going to be kind of up here. All this part here kind of be in shade, so like that. Again, I'm just doing lines. So this is kind of like cross-hatching, right? This whole part right here, I would also cross-hatch. Now I'm assuming you already have a picture with good form in it. So in this case, you're just trying to figure out how am I going to bring out that form. I might do some lines like this, going across this addendum just to show that. I might have to zoom in to do this right. That way you can show that that part is not as bright. So try to bring out the brightness in this part more, as you can see. Again, just making lines, that's all I'm doing there. Go back to my thicker pen brush here, and I'm going to mark in this darkest spot here with just pure black. I reserve this for the most darkest parts of the image. You can actually do it for quite a bit of the image if you want. You can just do this whole part here super dark, solid black, and that would add some cool form as well. And in fact, I might end up doing that, and the reason why is it's going to be hard to get that big amount of area with lines. Now on a piece of paper it wouldn't be so hard. Now another thing I'm going to consider doing to add, to get this form across, this I'm going to make that all dark, is I might actually do a couple lines like this. And that kind of adds a little bit of depth, more like a halftone or something. You just do a couple lines across like that, some big lines. And that hints at where there's halftone. That is, if you would shade with a slightly less shadowy, slightly less color, slightly less, what's the word I'm looking for? You just shade it not as hard, less intense. I want to hit at that light part there. The other thing I'm going to do too is I'm going to consider thickness of lines and edges. So this side over here is dark, and so if I do that, if I end up doing a halftone over there, also I like to double lines up sometimes. Just looks kind of cool. It just depends where it's at too, though. So that's a much thicker line on that side, and I might even go even bolder and thicker, like this. And what that's going to do is add. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'll do this instead. Right, so that's going to add kind of dimensionality to this. And I'm going to do all this right here kind of thick as well, just to kind of show that it's a thicker, almost like a drop shadow, but just to show that it's further away from the light, and so it's going to get a thicker line. So I'm not doing the face in this one just to save time on the tutorial. All this over here is far away from the light, and so I'm going to make it thicker. Add thicker lines over there. This side won't be as thick because it's on the lighter side. So when you think about it that way, that in itself kind of starts to add a little bit of three-dimensionality to it just by placing your lines, or how you do your lines thick and thin. Sometimes I like to just, break my line up and not even finish it on the light side, just kind of make it look like, almost like it's so bright the highlight is kind of knocking the line out. Okay, I'm going to go back to my 3 brush now. In fact, I'm just going to change this to a size 3. You don't have to redo anything. Oh, wrong number. Can't see. Far away from the keyboard. Okay, there we go. And this I'm going to do just straight lines. I might even, continue some of those lines out into his chest a little bit. It's actually really similar to shading. You can even do this with a pencil. You don't have to do it with a pen. You can do halftone lines with the pencil, and then you can also crosshatch on parts that you want to be darker. Oops. Let's say you want all this right here to be a little bit darker. You can just crosshatch the lines. And again, this is a pin, so size 3 pin. You can do this with a big pin. Try to get long lines like that. I'm trying to see what. So this here, maybe I'll do the lines closer together. And you can get super realistic with just lines. So this is more of a comic book style, but if you go in with lines like smaller lines closer together, notice it's still a pin. You get that more realistic look, and you can come back in here again, and you can even shade it again. And and you can do this with a big pen. I can do it with a big pen at least, so you should be able to do it with a big pen. You get different levels of shade by how you do the lines. So here, this is just lines in one direction. It might look like I'm scribbling back and forth, but I'm not. I'm going in one direction. Now this right here, I need to make this darker, so I'm going to go over it with either cross-hatching, go over the lines again in a different direction. So I'll make it darker. So what I'm doing is I'm going one direction like this, and I'm going another direction like this. You can also go in even another direction from those two directions, and it'll keep getting darker and darker. If I go back to my 5, I don't have as much control over this pen. It's a much bigger, thicker pen. This is more like using a marker. Whereas a size 3's pen is more like using a big pen. I'll just do that and just this, I guess. Okay, shape is on. Oh, wrong pen. This one. Shape dynamics. There we go. Now what I need to do is create the illusion of shadow here. So I'm going to do lines in one direction. And one kind of neat trick in Photoshop you could do, this makes it a little bit easier. It's kind of high, go over the spot you want to add your lines to. That way when you do your lines, you won't go outside the line, like that. And so now when I go across here with straight lines, I know it's going to stay within that area. Like that. So let's get that. No, so that line's dark, so I'll try to make it lighter. I'm not going to do this perfect. Come on. Okay, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so bear with me. I'm trying not to do it like too perfect, but when something just gets real stupid looking, it irritates me. Okay, there we go. So now he's starting to look, more shaded. Do some cross-hatching there. Cross-hatching here. So cross-hatching is all about what, when you want a different tone, okay, I know that I want the tone to be a little bit darker there than everywhere else. And I want this tone to be really light, and so I'm just going to make it really light by doing light lines all across. That is, I want that highlight on that side to be a little bit darker than the highlight on the other side, as it would be naturally. And you can go in and you can just break down an image and go how much more shading differences do I want everywhere. And you can get as realistic or as cartoony as you like. It's up to you. You can also use pre-done like, I guess, lines. That is, you can make a file that has a bunch of lines in it, like going in one direction, like a bunch of lines going this direction. So first you can make a bunch of lines going this direction, make a brush out of it, and then, fill up the whole image with that brush by going edit fill and then turning it, to where the lines going this way. And then you go to layer and layer mask and you hide all. And then you go and reveal the parts, like you fill out this, shape here, and then, erase that, and then it'll show, erase the mask there, and then the lines will show through. You'll have nice, perfect, evenly spaced lines for your shading. And I wonder if I have one of those brushes made. Hold on a second. Right, so I don't have one made, but they're pretty easy to make. So what I do is I'm going to stay on the same image I'm on. Go to my pencil. I'm going to kind of zoom in just so I have an idea how big the lines will be. So that's going to be a pretty thick line, so let's go to size 3. That's going to be a pretty thick line too, size 1. And I'll probably have to do a size 1 line. Okay, so over here, I make a line. I'm going to go like this. Image, crop. Make a line here. Make a line here. Make a line here. I'm going to take this image now, the size. I'm going to go one length outside of it. And I'm going to crop it. What this does is it adds even space on both sides. Go to Edit. Where did I go again? I forgot. Define brush, define pattern. There we go. Name it whatever you want to name it. Click OK. And now it's done. I'm going to go back now. A few steps. So I'm back here to my image. Now I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to go pick that pattern I just made. So instead of here, I'm going to pick Pattern. I'm going to pick that pattern I just made, which is here. Click OK. And as you can see, the lines are really tiny, so they came out too tiny. I didn't expect that. Let me see something, make sure. Yeah, that's pretty tiny. So what I'm going to have to do is go back again. Let's see here. I guess I have to try to use size 3. I thought that would work if you're on the same exact, if you were in the same exact thing, I figured it would work, but I guess it doesn't. I'll add a little bit more space this time. Something like that. And then let's go and crop this, edit, define pattern, back up a few steps, and now I'm going to try to fill again. Edit, fill. This time I'm going to choose the next pattern I made, which is this pattern here. Click OK. That's a little further apart than I wanted now. Well, shit. Okay, well, anyway, that's how you do it. You just got to find the one that works good. Go ahead and make this multiply. So that's going to be pretty thick lines and pretty far apart. That's not quite what I wanted. I don't know why it's giving me one or the other. Like, you try fill again with the other pattern. Yeah, it's like, okay, one or the other is what you get. So maybe do it with a size 2. I don't know. Yeah, see, that's just not. That's like, it's a type of halftone. That's like, basically this is how you would work. This is kind of halftone right here. And then that's like a screen, and that gives you kind of a gray color. And so you can actually use your layer mask. That's kind of cheating, but if you had a ruler and everything and you spent your time, you could really make a nice lines that way. But manga was done that way with like sheets, and they would cut away the acetate and it would leave it on the page. That's how they get quick shading and stuff, was using something similar to that, a similar design or style to that. Now I can just come in and cut out only around him, and then cut out all this right here, and that would make all that look that much brighter. That's one trick you can do, but that would be not just using line, I guess. But whatever. Oh, wait a minute, what happened? I think I accidentally deleted the wrong layer. Okay, there we go. Got the layer back. Cool. Anyway, so you can do that. You can probably use a size 2 and space it just right, and then you can get your lines working here. I'm just going to go ahead and there we go. Continue doing my lines manually here really quick. Again, this is kind of hard to get nice, perfect lines in Photoshop, especially with a big area like this. It's much easier to do with pen and pencil. And then, yeah, that's all bright. So there you go. Now you have a slightly different, this isn't as bright as all the bright spots here. This bright spot probably won't be as bright either, but I want it to be kind of bright. So actually, I'm going to kind of do it in a different direction. Okay. The highlight's still there, so it's not as bright. This highlight here is there, but not as bright. And then you can go back in, let's say you have some white out or something like that, and you can just kind of So if I'm simulating whiteout, I have to go like this and just kind of maybe make your whiteout brush thin and add a couple thin lines going through it again, kind of crossing it out so it kind of beefs up the brightness there just a little bit, but not much. All right, so hopefully that answers the question. If you're trying to get a three-dimensional form with just lines, that's how you do it. You do it with cross-hatching, you do it with line width, line weight. Um, you can also do it with broken lines, over here like I've done here. So I try to use a lot of different techniques into one image and how to get that difference. And so I'm going to make this a little bit darker coming all the way out here. You can also, how far apart the lines are, how far apart they're spaced, can also make a difference. Right, space them further apart would add a little less shading in those certain areas. So you can start like kind of close together here, and then start spacing my lines further and further apart as I come out over here, like that. And that would add, it doesn't look as dark over there as it does where the lines are close together. So those are some little techniques you can use. Into the light area, you can bring some lines into the light area, and that would add a sense of shading. You can kind of break off lines like that, where shading would kind of be. Do the belly button here. So you can kind of trail lines off like that, and that shows that, hey, this part here, the shading so in a photograph, let's say what it would look like there is the shadow goes dark and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, like that. And so you kind of simulate that by doing some thick lines, and then you kind of do thinner lines and trail off like that, and it kind of gives that same effect but with pen. And you can do that with a marker even, just make your lines thinner and thinner, and then space them further apart as well. Again, you can add a little couple lines coming into the light. And what that shows is like, so in the photograph, what would happen then if we were looking at a photo here, or the drawing, this would all be darker, right? And then it would get not as dark here, and this would all be really bright. And so to get that kind of tone, you just add a few lights into the, moving into the highlight area. And that gives that, it gives off the idea that there's some tone there. So that's how you make tone, is just like that. So it's really the same thing as pencil. Think about it in the same way you work with pencil. Like, okay, I know in pencil I want to shade a little bit longer here because I'm going to get it darker. Use a slightly darker pencil and get it darker in this area here. And think about cell shading. That is, if I have dark, less dark, less dark, and then the normal mid-tone, and then over here, highlight color. How you do that is in cell shading is you'd go, okay, you go like this, something like this, right? You'd go, bam, there's one color, and then here's the next tone, and then here's the next tone. And that adds this kind of gradient, so you can add form, you can add idea or volume with that. Well, you can simulate that with your pencil or your pen, in which you go, okay, so now the first tone I can do with, say, just doing lines this way. That's the first tone. Here's the second tone, right? Or let's say, here's the second tone, and then here's the third tone. And you get that same concept just by spacing the lines. You can also get it by making it dark here, like that, and then going with lines that are, pretty close together but not too close, so they're not solid black. And then finally, the next one, you kind of space your lines out a little bit further, and that would add that kind of gradient. So the same way you do with pencil, as you take your pencil and it's dark, and then you kind of fade off as you're getting further away from it, and you're getting lighter and lighter and lighter, right? Like that. You can still get that gradation in your shadings, and with pencil you might come back over this way and then kind of like that, so you can get, it's like darker in this area, and then you slowly start working it out and just keep getting until it looks like it's all rolling together. You can do that with pen too. It's just a little bit different the way you do it with pen. So with pen you would kind of first start with lines and then start spreading those lines out further and further. Then you kind of come this way and spread those lines out, like that. And so, but you have to it's really hard to work with this Photoshop pen. It doesn't really work like a big pen might. It's hard to shade with this pen that way. But yeah, so at least I haven't figured out how to shade with a pen that way. I have to do more of a style like this. But anyway, you get the idea. Hopefully that helps you guys. And when you're drawing with a pen like a big pen, and really practice with a big pen. It's really a good thing to practice with. You can get pretty realistic looks. You can even shade if you get really good with the big pen, like shading, just like lightly like that. You can actually get a nice fade with a big pen. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, thank you for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to see more free tutorials, and that way it'll notify you when they are available. All right, there's one other thing I did want to do, and that's add a darkness here. I'm going to kind of break that off so it goes down like that. Maybe a couple lines in here. Kind of break this off a little bit like this. And so what that does is it's going to make it to where I can see in this is like the dark area. Normally if there wasn't a secondary light, this would all be dark and you'd hardly see any detail at all. But because there's a secondary light coming from this way, it's lightening up some of the shadows, so you're seeing some of the detail in the shadow. But the light is not as bright as all this light on this side here, which is pure white. This right here is has a little bit of tone to it. But this, I didn't have this done before, so now I have some more form in this shadow area here. Right, so there you go.